Fulton E. Holmes MARTA station. Atlanta police say when they arrived, MARTA police told them that medics rushed the victim to the hospital.
Two 15-year-olds are facing charges after police say they carjacked a rideshare vehicle at gunpoint in DeKalb County. Several law enforcement agencies and technology all helped to make this arrest. Powder Springs police got an alert. One of their flock cameras caught the stolen car and it entered their city. Then Cobb County police used real-time crime technology to figure out where the car was headed. When officers tried to pull the teens over in the DeFore Farms neighborhood, they ran off.
The first suspect was caught almost immediately. He was actually found with a firearm and a mask. The second suspect, he began running, and they found him quite a ways away after a canine trap, and they found him in the back of a smaller dump-style truck. He was also found with a firearm as well.
The teens will face multiple charges throughout the two counties, including theft, possession of a firearm, and carjacking.
In Fayette County, a 23-year-old facing felony murder charges after a drug overdose. Fayette County deputies found a man who died of a suspected OxyContin overdose on January the 26th. Police haven't released his name. Investigators tracked those pills to Levi McElwaney. They charged him with felony murder and use of a telecommunication facility to a drug transaction. A man has been arrested for arson after a house fire Saturday evening in Hall County. Fire officials were called to the home on Athens Highway about 6:30 Saturday night. One person was hospitalized with minor injuries. Tonight, the fire marshal's office says they arrested Stephen Barfield and charged him with arson. No word yet on a possible motive. Georgia's beer industry is hoping to brew up some policy changes.
They say the state's laws make it hard to sell their own beer. Fox Eye's Denise Dillon tells us how proposed legislation would change things.
There's a number of ways the legislation would benefit breweries. One of the main points, they'd be allowed to sell their beer to a business right down the road. Right now, they can't do that.
We've been in the neighborhood for 10 years.
Nathan Cowan, owner of Eventide Brewing, says he likes to think of his brewery as a gathering spot in the community.
We've had everything from birthdays to bar mitzvahs here.
But he says it's also a very tough business. He says one problem is Georgia's laws are too restrictive on how small breweries can sell beer. Right now, they can only sell it in tap rooms or through a distributor, but that cuts into the bottom line. Senate Bill 163, dubbed FOAM, Fair and Open Access to Market, would, among other things, allow breweries to sell to restaurants and grocery stores in the county.
There should be an avenue for small breweries to be able to sell to local businesses to, create revenue that stays in the community.
Limited self-distribution for small breweries, and almost 40 other states currently have some form of self-distribution for their breweries.
Joseph Cortez, executive director of Georgia Craft Brewers Guild, says they've tried legislation similar to this in the past, but this time around they've got a lot of public support. About 8,000 signatures on a petition and almost 1,000 people who have emailed the legislators.
Public supporters of small breweries all across the state who know that these local breweries are pillars of their community, anchors of economic development, and really make neighborhoods great places to live and to visit.
The thing about breweries is they're really a cornerstone of communities.
A rally is planned at the state capitol Tuesday morning. Brewery owners, staff, and supporters will all be there, urging legislators to support Senate Bill 163. In Atlanta, Denise Dillon, Fox 5 News.
Bill organizers hope that this plan makes Atlanta's city streets safer and reduces pedestrian fatalities. We're finally getting a look at what's inside the Senate's new border bill, and does it actually stand a chance at passing?
Nope.
And the U.S. military says retaliatory strikes continue against Iran-backed groups. But will the U.S. strike Iran itself?
How long it's been going on?
The issue here is they have some data that is probably not backed up, that is either lost or encrypted because of ransomware.
Chairman Rob Pitt says that there's no evidence or reason to believe the incidents related to the election process in Fulton County or other current events.
That's what
the county
they
says
say.
It's been working around the clock to get all the systems back up and running.
Activists opposed to the police training center project got signatures from a referendum. Will those signatures get counted?
To 45 across our country, and many of those are in their age range that you will see in college.
The National Center for Drug Abuse Statistics reported 1,400 overdose deaths in Georgia last year, which accounted for 2% of all opioid-related deaths nationwide. Cooper, who serves as chairwoman of the House Public Health Committee, hopes the potential changes to state law will save lives.
It's not an answer to addiction, but as long as someone is alive, you have a chance to get them into a program and to kick their opioid habit.
HB 1035 made it out of committee. From there, it will go to the House Rules Committee for consideration before it can go to the House floor for a full vote. At the state capitol, Joy Dukes, Fox 5 News.
And we're looking at a clear sky across North Georgia. Temperatures, well, they're cooling tonight in the dry air. We're at 50 right now. We're headed to the 30s in a lot of spots. In fact, we're already there. You look around North Georgia, we got 37 in LaGrange, 39 up in Clayton, 40 in Covington, even 39 out in Eatonton out there in Putnam County out to the east of Metro Atlanta. As we go hour by hour through this, you find that readings...
The cut covers more than 500 jobs based on the company's latest annual filing, which says
more people losing their jobs.
5,300 full-time employees. Snap most recently cut jobs in August 22, laying off about 20% of its workforce. Hundreds of Atlanta students got to do some early prom shopping today.
Yes, students received one-on-one styling sessions with Monty Durham of TLC's Say Yes to the Dress Atlanta. It's part of Warner Bros. Discovery 2024 Say Yes to the Prom Tour. The experience included a selection of dresses and custom tuxedo fittings to help students develop their own unique look.
These students have been very excited, but more than that, they've been very grateful and polite to be here. And it's, thank you, let me look. And they're excited to be here as we are excited to have them here.
Say Yes to the Prom Tour invited 3 schools in the area to participate today. 3 more schools will participate tomorrow.
Everybody looking great, Christine. Well, Raheem Morris covered way more than a football field's worth of...
The U.S. intends to continue launching strikes against Iran-backed groups in the Middle East. There have been at least 2 attacks by Iranian proxy groups in Syria since last Friday night's airstrikes. The most recent attack against American forces was this morning. It involved a single rocket fired toward a U.S. base in Syria. The National Security Advisor was asked whether the president had ruled out striking inside Iran.
I'm not going to get into what's on the table and off the table when it comes to the American response.
Defense Secretary Austin said in a statement this weekend that the president has ordered additional actions to hold the IRGC and its affiliated militias responsible. Your prescriptions could be
deny illegal entry. President Biden says he's disappointed that dreamers are left out of the border bill. The bill is likely to dash hopes for a quick, clear path to citizenship for hundreds of thousands of people brought into the U.S. illegally as children, as Congress takes a harder line on immigration. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The $118 billion bipartisan bill allocates about $20 billion for border security-related measures. Let's take a closer look at how this money will be spent and the proposed changes to immigration policy.
The bill will give $8 billion in emergency funding for immigration and customs enforcement, including $3 billion to increase detention capacity. Customs and Border Patrol will receive an additional $7 billion. That's on top of their annual budget of roughly $21 billion a year. More than $700 million would go toward hiring new Border Patrol agents and paying agents overtime. Additionally, the bill will provide $23 million to the DEA and $25 million to the State Department and USAID to counter fentanyl smuggling into the U.S. On top of that, $1.4 billion will be dispersed to help states and local governments handle the influx of illegal immigrants. The bill would also introduce an expedited process for asylum seekers, giving asylum officers emergency authority to screen applicants within 90 days of their arrival in the country, using a tougher standard, and for those who pass, decide cases within another 90 days. The goal is to make sure no asylum case reviews last longer than 6 months. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services would get $4 billion to hire more than 4,300 officers who would take on the work now reserved for immigration judges. The bill will also require Homeland Security to turn away all migrants if illegal crossings exceed 5,000 on average over 7 days, or 8,500 in a single day.
So if this new power were applied and you're apprehended between ports of entry, if you seek asylum, you wouldn't be allowed to do that, and you could be rapidly deported from the United States back to Mexico.
The bill mandates that the Biden administration would have to use the money already laid out for a border wall during the Trump years. It also includes an offer of permanent residency to Afghan nationals who fled the country after the Taliban takeover in 2021.
And here to speak with us about the Senate's proposed border deal is Victor Avila, a retired supervisory special agent with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Victor, welcome back. Always great to have you on. As a former border...
And you guys have done a great job outlining the specifics of this bipartisan bill. I got to tell you, I don't like it. It doesn't do what I want it to do, and that is to stop the flow of illegal aliens coming into our country.
That's what we need it to
all
do.
the money that's being allocated to all these different agencies, and I worked with these agencies, especially USCIS, which is one of probably the biggest bureaucratic agencies that exist under the Department of Homeland Security. The answer is not to give them more money and more personnel. You wouldn't need that unless you wanted to accept more people into this country and process them in here. What I want to see is two very simple things. Have the people remain in Mexico and wait there to see how we look at their asylum claims, if in fact they even have one. Remember, 9 out of 10 people coming to the country do not qualify for that.
Right. There have been many criticisms of this deal and, of course, of the Biden administration for not just re-implementing the Remain in Mexico policy. But some analysts have been saying that, dynamics with Mexico have changed and that may not be such a simple solution at this time anymore. What are your thoughts on that?
Great question, because the Biden administration has sent Secretary Blinken and Secretary Mayorkas to Mexico, and they made a deal. They made a secret deal that have not involved the American people. And what I've seen on the ground here, especially at the border, is that Mexico all of a sudden is cooperating and keeping a lot of the illegals from coming into the country. The numbers that plummeted in January. So I know there is coordination there. But instead of Mexico telling us and demanding the United States what they want, it should be the other way around. The United States should hold Mexico accountable for their role in allowing a lot of people from over 150 countries to use their country of Mexico as a springboard to come into ours.
And you're saying that this bill is not effective at fending off people who are coming from the border, but we do have also some congressmen criticizing the bill, saying that it is actually creating a pull factor if it gets passed. So we have Texas Congressman Mike McCall saying that some of the features, including the, giving people an ankle bracelet or perhaps a work permit and setting them free into the interior with a 90-day return date to their hearing, would create some kind of pull factor. What are your thoughts on that?
And that's exactly what it is, that magnet. We are not getting rid of the magnet and the incentives to come to this country. And the problem here now, the bigger picture, is that the people coming here finding themselves in very difficult situations. They're homeless, they don't have a job, they don't have education. And so all of that is now being given to them by the government under our tax dollars. And a lot of people are upset throughout the country because we have a lot of needs within our own U.S. citizens. And it doesn't seem to be fair that they put people from all over the world before them. And so that's actually a really good way to look at it. If you stop the incentives, if you stop New York from giving them $53 million in debit cards or credit cards, they will stop coming.
Now the Border Patrol, the Border Patrol Union has endorsed this bill, the border aspect of this proposed bill. How much of an impact do you think that will have on negotiations for the bill and the public's opinion of it?
That's a difficult situation for me because I love what the men and women of Border Patrol do, but let's understand that the Border Patrol Union is a political wing of the Border Patrol, and sometimes I believe are not expressing the views of the men and women on the ground. I talk to a lot of border agents, and they want and are craving for them to get their job back. This bill doesn't give them the authority to do that.
All right, Victor Avila, retired supervisor, special agent with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We're down at Cornerstone Children's Ranch is because, you know, the illegals were coming across and raiding their food pantry. I mean, this is a ranch that's trying to help children that are in need. They're trying to help widowed women and others, and they can't function when they constantly have this threat. And so, you know, people were so excited to be there to support this children's ranch and to support those congressional candidates that are running for office. Now we know who we can trust. I mean, we know who we can vote for. That are men and women of faith and that are going to do the right thing. They're going to stand up with the boldness and courage of David. So it was, you know, these folks left there very encouraged, feeling like what took place this weekend was worth every moment of their time and expense to be a part of.
That was Robert Agee, the co-organizer of the Take Our Border Back convoy. And the U.S. Senate yesterday unveiled a nearly $120 billion bipartisan border security bill. The bill would also provide aid to Ukraine and Israel. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on this legislation that's already facing opposition from the House of Representatives.
President called on us to unite the border agreement. House Speaker Mike Johnson declared it dead on arrival if it reaches his chamber. Johnson wrote on X that this bill is even worse than we expected. Come close to ending the border catastrophe. The House pressed the prende.
Just has to be secured. The president has the authority right now. He doesn't need another act of Congress.
The bill would provide about $20 billion for border security, around $60 billion for Ukraine, about $14 billion for Israel, and $10 billion in humanitarian assistance for civilians in conflict zones, including in Ukraine, Gaza, and the West Bank. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said he would take steps to hold an initial vote on the bill on Wednesday. The bill's proponents said it would end the controversial catch and release practice that critics say contribute to high numbers of illegal immigrants arriving at the southern border. It would do so by speeding up rulings on asylum cases instead of quickly releasing apprehended illegal migrants and allowing them to stay in the United States for years while they await hearings. Some Republicans are skeptical. Senate bill. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise wrote on X that, "Here's what the people pushing this deal aren't telling you. It accepts 5,000 illegal immigrants a day and gives awards to asylum recipients, a magnet for more immigration. Once the number of encounters reaches 5,000, expulsions would automatically take effect. Immigration is the second largest concern for Americans, according to a Reuters Ipsos poll published last week." Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
I mean, even Lindsey Graham is saying without significant amendments, this deal is dead even in the Senate. So we do have an inspector general now for Ukraine, but and they've already found $1 billion of malfeasance there with not having to look very hard. So I'm not sure this deal is really going to be the one that secures the border.
Now, is the foreign aid necessary for each of the countries? What will happen if Ukraine and Israel doesn't get the aid?
Well, this is a function of the weakness in our industrial base. We are supporting two wars and a contingency, and we're not even counting what America needs for their own armed forces. So, and the wars are Ukraine and then Israel, and then making sure Taiwan has everything it needs. Plus, rebuilding the 2023 and 2024 defense budget went way up, and we are really having challenges in deliveries out of our weak industrial base. So I think we're going to have to think smarter and more innovative. We just don't have the capacity to support two conflicts, a contingency, and the needs of America at the same time.
Now, as far as the bill goes, it's a $118.2 billion legislative aid. About The majority, like 60 billion, would go to Ukraine, and about 10 billion to Israel. And there's a nearly 2 billion to Taiwan, actually, from what I'm understanding. Now, as the Chinese Communist Party becomes more and more aggressive towards Taiwan, the island nation, how impactful would this be for Taiwan?
Well, 2 billion is, if that's the case, is good, but there's already a 19 billion back order on things that have not been delivered yet. So you'd really have to say in aggregate, there's 21 billion to be delivered here. We need to get more equipment, more ordnance, more spare parts faster. The Taiwanese Air Force is chewing up its spare parts because it's having to do so many air defense missions. And China has just caused a big problem here and a big opportunity for misunderstanding and accidental airline shoot down. This is their M503 southbound route through the Straits, which they now have rerouted to right up to the center line, which can cause gives less response time to the Taiwanese, and they're weaponizing civil air traffic, which nothing good happens when you introduce civil air traffic into contentious airspace. Think KL-007 in 1983, the Iranian shoot down in 1988. So this is bad, and this is don't ever introduce civil air traffic into such situations.
All right, suspects in Phoenix, Arizona. That's after leaving New York City for California last week.
Last week, this video went viral. It shows a group of people believed to be illegal immigrants attacking two police officers near Times Square. Manhattan's District Attorney's Office confirmed to NTD that the suspects were released without bail.
Reports later suggested that the suspects boarded a bus for California after having been released from custody in New York. Fox News now says that authorities arrested the suspects in Phoenix, Arizona.
ICE sources reportedly confirmed the arrests last night. It's not clear which of the suspects have been arrested.
Also on Monday, New York City Mayor Eric Adams spoke about illegal immigrants who commit crimes.
I want to reiterate the overwhelming number of 170 plus thousand migrant asylum seekers are attempting to continue their next leg of their journey of pursuing the American dream.
Catch and release.
Crime will be treated like any other criminal in this city. The small number of people are breaking the law and having a huge impact on our public safety, and that is why we zeroed in on them.
City officials added that it's often hard to track.
Why'd you let the man out of jail?
That's because the city sometimes has no information about them, such as no criminal history, no photos, no phone number, or other information.
House lawmakers are set to vote today on a resolution to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. The House Homeland Security Committee filed its impeachment resolution last week. They accused Mayorkas of high crimes and misdemeanors in his handling of the southern border. Two GOP congressmen, Representatives Tom McClintock and Ken Buck, have already said they would vote against the resolution. Both have argued that an impeachable offense has not been identified. With full attendance, Republicans can only lose 3 votes to pass the impeachment resolution. If the full House passes the articles, Mayorkas would become the first cabinet secretary to be impeached in nearly 150 years. Coming up, a super PAC backing President Biden reportedly plans to spend millions highlighting rival Donald Trump's legal issues. Find out why a super PAC is doing this and not the Biden campaign itself.
And who would former President Trump choose as his running mate? We asked New Yorkers what they think. More in just a moment here on NTD News Today.
Reforms in our immigration system in a long time.
Bullshit.
The toughest set of reforms to secure the border ever. Now, all indications are this bill won't even move forward to the Senate floor. Why? A simple reason. Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump thinks it's bad for him politically. Therefore, he doesn't, even though it helps the country, he's not for it. He'd rather weaponize this issue than actually solve it. So for the last 24 hours, he's done nothing, I'm told, but reach out to Republicans in the House and the Senate and threaten them and try to intimidate them to vote against this proposal.
Biden's message today is his response to the Senate's bipartisan agreement on a $118 billion aid package that House Republicans are planning to share border enforcement policy with wartime aid for Ukraine and Israel and other U.S. allies. The Senate was expected this week to hold a key test vote on the legislation, but within hours of the text being released, House Speaker Mike Johnson said on social media that it would be dead on arrival if it reaches the House. Another breaking news here, a D.C. appeals court has ruled that former President Trump can
You might remember that shortly after Madison made good of him was classified, he had that there were co-sex parties among elected representatives. 22 recently, Madison Coffey coalition joking with a friend in response to a video that he characterized as the latest hit piece meant to destroy his political career. The 26-year-old man, who has been in a string of controversies in recent weeks, again this was 2022, released a statement Wednesday appearing to confirm the authenticity of a short clip showing him naked in bed atop another man, getting physical and making noises. And he said this: "A new hit against me just dropped. Years ago, in this video, I was being crass with a friend, trying to be funny. We were acting foolish and joking. That's it. I'm not backing down. I told you there would be a drip, drip campaign," he said in a tweet. And then he added further in, "Blackmail won't win. We will." Now, after all of this, it says a little more than a month ago, Cawthorn drew headlines proclaiming, all this of course came out after this, because he claimed that colleagues in Congress were doing cocaine and inviting him to orgies. Now, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy met with Cawthorn, after which McCarthy told Axios that Cawthorn admitted to him that he had exaggerated such suggestions. And given, of course, the attacks on Cawthorn afterwards, a lot of people are now questioning, were they really exaggerated? Now, note that at the time, officials of the Transportation Security Administration reportedly confiscated a gun from Cawthorn, and what would be the second time Cawthorn had been caught trying to bring a gun through an airport since being elected to Congress. Cawthorn also faced scrutiny for his use of taxpayer money at a luxury resort, and and it notes that buried in the lengthy statement in a separate and eye-opening contention, they say this: "It is believed that Dwayne was targeted and drugged as part of a blackmail and robbery conspiracy." And they say further in fact, his highly expensive watch was stolen from him shortly before his death. Now, of course, the central point of many of these discussions are on Jeffrey Epstein. When we talk about these high-end, rings targeting politicians and influencers for blackmail, a lot of people say, well, yeah, we know about Jeffrey Epstein. Previous cases where Epstein had been released before the one where he died or allegedly killed himself, the the FBI actually released documents and information on the case when he was, of course, charged for sex trafficking of an underage girl. And it said that they had video recordings at his island on Epstein Island, this Lolita Island, recordings of sex acts. And many of the people, of course, allegedly recorded were high-ranking officials, international leaders, businessmen, and so on. And many have questioned, why would Epstein have recorded these sex acts of all these world leaders? And of course, Epstein was in the news again recently, since some of the names in the court case of his associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, were actually recently unsealed. Now, just a few months ago, before, during the discussions on Epstein, the issue of political blackmail was being brought up again related to Epstein. And Republican Congressman Tim Burchett claimed that honeypots were being used in Washington, that some of these acts are secretly being recorded, just like the Epstein allegations, and that these recordings are being used as leverage to then control our elected leaders. Now, the UK Independent said victims, Epstein's former employees and witnesses who helped to build the case against the now-dead financier. Many of the names and Epstein's flight log were already public to an extent. It notes that Johnson noted that Mr. Burchett had called for the names to be revealed in the House of Representatives, and intimated that lawmakers were trying to hide their complicity by opposing the release of the information. In other words, he was saying that the elected officials we have who are trying to stop the Epstein documents from being made public, that these people may be trying to hide their complicity in it. Now let me show you. It says this. It seems like now you are fighting with her in the House. Why the protection mechanism? And more importantly, you mentioned recently in an interview that there may be some members of Congress who are personally compromised by this and that they don't want the truth to get out. Can you expand on that? This is Johnson asking Mr. Burchett. And Mr. Burchett then proceeded to weave a tale of enticement, deceit, and blackmail that he believes secretly controls the votes of lawmakers. And he claims that elite power brokers in Washington, D.C., quote, use the old honeypot to gain leverage over lawmakers and force them to vote for, quote, crazy stuff. Of course, a honeypot is where you sexually extort somebody. And he said this, here's how it works. You're visiting, you're out of the country, or out of town, or you're in a motel or a bar in Washington, D.C., and whatever.